Yep, here you go.
Good Saturday and happy football nation. We got the Cyclops and 2020. What's that?
Yes.
You'll wait. Did you have your coffee?
I'm here. No coffee.
We'll get some coffee going, man. It's time to talk some football. So we got the Cyclops and we got 2020 Keith here. And we got a fun show that planned for you today. It's week 2, exciting. We were talking about this all up through the preseason, which had no football, but I guess through training camp, if you will. How the first few weeks we're going to see some injuries just mounting. And man, have we ever, right? Talk about that.
Does it seem like it's more than usual?
I don't think so.
I mean, it's hard to say, right? We didn't really do the research to see if it's like that, but it just feels that way.
It does, because we haven't had football in a while, but there's definitely some injuries to talk about. Some people that are coming off injury, some big, some small. It's all going to impact fantasy values. We'll talk about that. We'll do some news around the league, some interesting things happening there. And we're going to do our stardom sit-em. Look, tomorrow's Sunday. There are some interesting starts, some interesting sits. We'll go through that. We love you to call in, give us your lineup questions. We've already seen some interesting trade offers. We know that's going to happen. Trades are one of the things that make fantasy football so much fun. So we got a fun show in store for you. Cyclops and I, we always do our homework, making sure we're giving you the best of the best, not the obvious stuff. We don't want to be that generic, can of corn show. We want to give you the stuff that you're not going to think about.
So Brandon, we'll get to you in just a minute. We already got people asking questions because we're at the time of year, right, where everybody is, who do I start? What do I do? Already two, because there's so many question marks, and you get a week worth of defenses that you see, and quarterbacks that maybe you were on the fence about, and quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers, who kind of fell, and all of a sudden he looks like Aaron Rodgers after 2 years.
Against a very beatable secondary, by the way. Let's just be very clear on that.
All right, so let's get right to. I'm gonna put this up.
I got to stop for 1 second, though. I think this is very important. We are not a political show, obviously. We're a fantasy football show. We are all about fun and games. But I just got to stop for literally 10 seconds and just honor RBG. Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Indeed. Yep, I agree.
And a pillar of our justice system, not just someone that meant so much to our company and civil rights and women's rights, and broke ground, from the second she got out of law school, couldn't find a job. The woman was a trailblazer and a really, really important person that's a part of our history. Of course, everyone knows died yesterday. So I just want to honor her and what she's brought to our country and how much she's done. And couldn't do the show without honoring her. So we'll move on to more fun stuff, Cyclops. Why don't we start with the injury reports? We could talk a little bit about Thursday night's game, since we haven't done a show there. If you want to, anything that stands out from you, OBJ got a little on track. Curious your thoughts on Joe Burrow, who did put up 300 yards, and your thoughts on Baker. Is that Baker? Is that what we're going to see? Or is that Baker against Cincinnati? Kind of like when Lamar Jackson plays the Dolphins, although he's good anyway. So I want to hear some of your thoughts on that, some of your takeaways from Thursday's game. We'll hit some injuries, hit some news around the league, get to your questions, and, of course, do our stardom sit-em. So let's start with that. What were your any takeaways from Thursday night's game that's striking you?
Let's get to Brendan's question first, and then we will move into Thursday night game and go from there. So he is asking, really want to start Rivers versus Vikings over Wentz. And then he says, can you convince me not to?
No, I cannot convince you not to. You must make that start. You have to make that start. Yes.
And Wentz obviously was going to be the first quarterback you drafted there, but still without Alshon Jeffrey. And Sanders is going to be back, but overall, no.
You gotta go Phillip Rivers there. Absolutely.
Yeah, granted, they're not going to have T.Y. Hilton, but granted, that's okay. He didn't do much last week. They have Paris Campbell, who we're going to talk about later.
Play. Yep.
Pittman.
They'll be without Taylor, Jack Burrell as well, but that's not that big a deal.
We saw this happen. The Phillip Rivers likes to dump it off to the running backs, right? Look at Hines and Taylor last week. Of course, Matt got hurt. So you may see 15 completions to running backs this week in Indy. So yeah,
Jonathan Taylor's a great start there, but I definitely Phillip Rivers over Carson Wentz. They look terrible. That offense they're going to get a very big boost getting Miles Sanders back. There's no question. There's no question there. But between those two, you got to go Phillip Rivers. Absolutely.
Yep. We have another question. We'll get to that in a second. As far as Thursday's game, we saw OBJ go down the sideline, have that nice touchdown. Which it was not a touchdown. That one, right? That was
he had a touchdown. OBJ had that touchdown. Yeah, it was
because he wasn't touched, right? They reviewed it. He wasn't touched. Yeah. So that I mean, you look at the rest of the game, and he didn't do much.
No,
he had that long catch. He only had 4 catches, I think, for 74 yards and the touchdown. He was targeted a little bit more. Is that the real Mayfield? I don't know. It's Cincinnati, and Cincinnati played better week 1 defense. I just don't know.
I'm gonna be bold. I'm sorry. I don't think it is. I mean, he looked good. He made good decisions. He followed some of his reads better than I've seen him in his last 8 or 9 games. Yeah. His quarterback IQ, for some reason, last year didn't look good. It didn't look anything like he did at the middle of 2018 when we were all excited about him. Right. I still don't believe in him yet. He hasn't shown me enough. And it's a very soft Cincinnati defense. He really wasn't getting that pressured, so he had time. So I'm not convinced on Baker. My biggest takeaway from that game was how committed Cleveland is when able to run the ball, how big a part of that running game Kareem Hunt is, and even with Kareem Hunt, part of that running game, Nick Chubb is still just an absolute baller. That kid can just run the ball.
Those are your 2 best players on the team, your running backs. So why not? I mean, sorry, OBJ, but those 2 guys are past you at this point. As far as the best players on the team, and Landry, so they have to focus on those guys, and when they do, it opens everything else up.
Yep, and another bold prediction, because Cleveland's defense is a little bit better. I don't think Landry's going to get his typical 90, 100-yard grab, 100 receptions this year. I think he's in line for a regression, and OBJ is just not the OBJ that had Eli Manning slinging him the rock. So if you drafted him on the early side, I think you're going to be in for a rough year.
Landry, already people are kind of regretting that, I assume, after 2 weeks of low numbers. That's going to be tough. I agree.
As a matter of fact, I would say at this point, if you have OBJ, I wouldn't really say it's selling high. He did get a touchdown. Sell medium. So if you can get anything for him, if you can go out and get even like a Cortland Sutton, who I know is a little injured, but when he comes back as the wide receiver 1 there, I would sell medium on OBJ. So enough with Thursday night, unless there's anything else you wanted to wrap up around that game.
There is Joe Burrow. Now, fantasy-wise, his numbers weren't too bad from Thursday night. Of course, it was 61 passes.
Ridiculous.
They were behind and they were throwing. I don't know. I didn't quite understand the game plan there. You were running Mixon. He was doing well. Then you bring Bernard in. I mean, I think we should have seen more of that. And screens. The screens were working in the first half to those guys. And then they kind of went away from that. But 61 passes is a lot.
Yeah. He looked like a second game quarterback. I believe Burrow's, he's a stud. This guy's going to be an NFL and fantasy talent for a decade. It's going to take time to get there. I do believe in him. I don't know if I'd be starting him at all this year. It might be good for a dynasty pick. But I think he looks good. You can see he's got the chops. He's got the smarts. He's got the quarterback IQ.
It's going to take some time.
It's going to take some time. One last thing I'll say about it is Joe Mixon is perennially a slow starter. It's just always been that way for whatever reason. We said this before, Cyclops. Don't panic. Everyone starts to panic on their teams and make really rash, bad decisions, taking bad trades, making bad trade offers. Don't panic. Stick with your guns. With what you have going on right now, you pick these guys for a reason. It's week 2. Don't flip your lids on some of these players yet. Okay. Let's go into some of the injury reports. Let's go to the big ones and the obvious, the outs. Some big names, biggest tight end in football other than Travis Kelce, George Kittle is out. They're concerned it might go a little bit longer than a week. We're going to see. So Kittle's out. From a tight end standpoint, we lost Azuna for the year, who was looking pretty nice. A nice little safety valve for Joe Burrow. That's going to hurt him. He's gone for the year. Any other gone for the years that came out of the week? Philip Lindsay's got a turf toe.
Yeah, well, you're right. He's got a turf, so that could be several weeks. And if you jumped up and took Gordon, you are loving that right now.
Not to mention, he looked fantastic. He looked really, really good last week.
And now he's going to be your essentially every down back.
Exactly.
So that is a huge boost for Gordon. If you took Gordon
with a team that's not going to have Cortland Sutton again, most likely he's a true game time decision, but it's not really trending in the right way. It is a true GTD, so we'll see what happens there. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. And Kenny Golladay, as we know, is going to be out again. Exactly, which means start your Marvin Jones. Deep leagues, even a Danny Amendola.
Amendola seemed to be the favorite target last week.
It's true. He got a lot of targets. He did.
Yeah.
They were trying to force the ball to Marvin Jones. Jones got 8 targets, but only corralled a few of them. You know what was interesting? Right. Quintez Cephas was like a 6th-round pick. He had 10 targets last week. He out-targeted everybody in that Detroit Lions offense because he's that outside receiver taking Galladay's spot. So in deep leagues, if you're really hurting, Marvin Jones, he got less targets, had less grabs than Quintez Cephas. I just like saying that name, by the way, so it's fun. But he's an interesting snatch if you're really hurting. He's taking up that Galladay role.
So they play. We'll get into some of these players later, but they play the Packers this week, which they're going to come out and score, so they're going to have to be throwing.
That's right.
And we'll talk about Swift and those guys a little bit later. Another big injury. Well, I don't know. It's because it's a Jet, but Crowder. And
Bell's out.
And Bell's out. Right. Yeah.
Yep. And you got AJ Brown's going to be out. So, we can take a look. Corey Davis is a great start here. I tell you who else is a nice start here. If you had AJ Brown, you might want to look at picking up Adam Humphries. If Corey Davis was drafted, Humphries had a lot of targets and a lot of looks. And with AJ Brown being out, Corey Davis is obvious, but he's something to look at, as is Johnny Smith.
That's a wide receiver. I was just going to say that. We're kind of doing our injuries and our start-up sit-em together here a little bit.
Exactly.
And Golden Tate looks like he's going to be out. So as far as the Giants, stick with, you got Slayton and Shepard there. Slayton had a really nice week 1. And I would go with this guy as much as you can at this point.
Slayton, love him. Yeah, I love him. Yeah, he's the guy he's got to have there. I agree.
And a lot of, he was not drafted in a lot of leagues.
No, he wasn't.
He kind of fell, and he had a really nice end of the year last year. And he just really didn't get drafted. He kind of got looked past in a lot of leagues. So I've been seeing him streaming a lot this year.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's get. We have a couple other questions.
Now, a couple other things just really quick on the injury. Okay, James Conner is going to play.
He was full participant in practice, so he should go at least 2 series.
Yep.
Before he's injured again.
We're going to talk start him, sit him, but he is going to play. But it's a whole different situation whether or not you should start him. Devontae Parker, also a game time decision. It doesn't look like that's trending the right way. So if you have Preston Williams, that's an interesting start as well. Jack Doyle is out. He's not going to play.
Wait, how about we didn't even bring him up? Michael Thomas.
Oh, out of Cincinnati.
No.
Oh, Michael Thomas. Well, yeah, Mike Thomas not playing. I think everyone, yes. So this is interesting. It's a severe ankle sprain. It's not a severe high ankle sprain. He's out several weeks. He might suit up on Sunday.
Right. I mean,
come on. This is a high ankle sprain. Anyone that knows football knows high ankle sprains are no joke.
Well, they don't play till Monday. He has an extra day.
Okay. Michael Thomas is not going to play football on Monday night. I can tell you that. And he's probably not going to be suiting up for a while. So if you have Alvin Kamara, you're loving it. Jared Cook, you're loving it.
And we'll get into some stardom sit-ems later there. But this is an important one. Also, how about Chris Godwin with the concussion?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And that
might clear though.
Yeah, but they're saying this one he's had later. His symptoms are showing that they're a little bit later. So they say that could be worse, so that could linger more.
I think
was
he's
reading up on this yesterday, and that could be a several week thing, or he could play tomorrow. Like, right? Who knows? We just don't know.
The league's concussion protocol, it can be pretty challenging. I think it's pretty doubtful that he is going to play. And some of the news around the league and how Bruce Arians was talking about how they really weren't using Mike Evans correctly. Makes Mike Evans a pretty nice start. I'll tell you something else to look there is Scotty Simpson. He had a real nice chemistry with Tom Brady. He's going to take that slot underneath role.
Evans, he's going to be his new Edelman.
That's right. He'll be his new Edelman. Well, that's what Godwin was supposed to be, but with him injured, I honestly really like Scotty Simpson here as well. Amari Cooper was limited in Thursday's practice. That's something that you want to look at. Keep your eye on that. And as far as any other major news that you want to look at, I mean, Evans is a little banged up, but it looks like he's playing. But I think that's the major candidates for the injury reports, unless there's something you want us to report on specifically.
Okay, so let's get to another question that we had come through. I don't know exactly who this is, but his name is MathQuest. So and we answered some questions for him last week as well. He's asking
MathQuest. I'm not doing any long algorithms, Sam.
Jonathan Taylor or Kenyon Drake in a standard scoring non-PPR. So
non-PPR.
With Marlon Mack out, and Chase Edmonds, it's like both of these are like split running backs that you feel like at this time, even though Kenyon Drake you thought was going to be the guy. So really, I guess maybe it comes down to who do they play, right? So Arizona plays Washington, and
which has a better front seven than people give credit for, by the way.
Yeah,
8 sacks against Philly.
They're one. I mean, who would have thought? Like, we're Dolphin fans. Obviously, you're wearing your hat. I have my screen behind me. We're Dolphin fans, and who would have thought Washington be 1-0 and we're 0-1?
Yeah, really.
Right? Or Jacksonville, or and is some of that attributed to no preseason? Is some of that attributed to teams being better or worse than we thought? We just don't know yet, right? You got to give it a couple weeks. That's why sometimes preseason can help with that, even though really you never know anyway. But so Indianapolis plays the Vikings, and
which has a beatable secondary, but also a pretty good front seven against the run. They did a nice job holding Aaron Jones somewhat in check.
Right. I think both of these guys are going to excel a little bit more in the passing game this week than the running game. And if I had to go with one, I mean, honestly, at this point, I'd probably go with Taylor. I think in Arizona, they have Hopkins, who had 14 grabs last week. So
I agree with you, and I'm going to tell you the edge for me. The edge for me is Kyler Murray ran for almost 100 yards last week.
Yep.
So where Kyler Murray is some of those dump off situations is going to take the ball and run it himself and get the first downs because this is 2020 football. This is what they're doing now.
Right. And Phillip Rivers won't one for 100 yards the rest of
Phillip Rivers can barely run off the sideline in between plays. So he's going to be, I don't care if it's PPR or not, forget about the point per reception because you said it's a standard. You're going to get the yardage out of Jonathan Taylor. And the kid, if you ask me, is just more talented than Kenyon Drake. And I love Kenyon Drake. So I would probably go JT here in the matchup, the fact that he's going to get the check down the yards. I didn't like Naheem Hines getting the touchdowns last week, but I think that was a one-game script, and that's not something you're going to see.
I don't even know that it was necessarily the script. It was just how it played out.
That's what I mean. It was just a one-game narrative.
With Matt getting hurt. Okay. So we will continue. Before we have a couple more questions here. We have Emmanuel Sanders or T.Y. Hilton. I would say definitely Emmanuel Sanders here. T.Y. Hilton's questionable at the moment. And Sanders, you have 95% chance, it looks like, is no Michael Thomas. So your upside, I think, at this point is with Sanders.
I'm going to disagree with you. If T.Y. Hilton is healthy, I'm going Hilton. I think that with Michael Thomas out, and I'm a huge Drew Brees fan. I've had a bromance crush on this guy forever. Just still pissed that the Dolphins didn't take him when he left San Diego. But I think they're going to rely very heavily on the run. I think you're going to see a heavy dose of Kamara and Lat Murray. If T.Y. Hilton is healthy, he's going to pepper him and Paris Campbell with targets. So stay close on that. with the injury updates. I personally like Hilton if he's playing. Looks like we got a lot more questions coming in.
We do. All right, so we're going to go to the next one here. This is back to math. What are your thoughts on starting Corey Davis in the flex position this week in a deeper league, given AJ Brown is out? Yes,
I like him as a wide receiver 3 before even a flex.
I mean, Corey Davis had 7 for 101 last week,
let alone with a healthy AJ Brown,
and let alone this week playing Jacksonville.
Love Corey Davis this week.
It does, when you talk about that, you always have to think their number one receiver, which we all thought was AJ Brown, right? Which we kind of think that way. When you take that receiver out, they put other people on the next best receiver, right? Where Corey Davis might have been open more last week because AJ Brown was there. And then all of a sudden they bring it, he's hurt. So you have to look at that a little bit. But overall, I think Corey Davis, he's one of my stardoms this week.
Absolutely.
So and absolutely, I don't know what your other options are there, but definitely, doing that. So we got a comment here. There's no injury news on T.Y. Hilton. I was reading that. Maybe it was I thought it was a limited practice. Maybe I missed.
I was wondering that as well because I didn't see an injury report on T.Y. Hilton as well. I thought you got something like a minute ago that I didn't get.
You know what? As we're talking here, I'll try to look it up. And I thought I was reading that, and I will. I'll report on that in just a moment. So
So answering your question though, if there's no injury report on T.Y. Hilton, I definitely like him personally over Emmanuel Sanders.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Here it is right here. T.Y. Hilton did not participate in practice. It just said he didn't participate in practice. Doesn't say out, doesn't say questionable, doesn't say anything. So maybe I was just going with that. I don't know why. Maybe he just took a day off. It's possible.
I want a day off.
Yeah, well, we all do. Jack Doyle, it says, and Jack Doyle's out actually.
Jack Doyle's out. Yeah,
Jack Doyle's out.
Yep.
If said I missed that, I didn't hear.
He surprisingly wasn't involved in the offense. That's very unusual for a Phillip Rivers, Frank Reich offense. Think about all the years.
He was okay.
Usually that's a focal point for Phillip Rivers. He loves that seam pass to the tight end. That's been a part of his repertoire for many, many, many years.
He definitely was using the running backs more the other day than Jack Doyle. But again, it's week 1, right?
Exactly. Can't make any rash judgments there. So keep asking your questions. We love them coming in. Stop me as they're coming in. As you know, with my 2020 vision, I can't read that shit. Why don't we start with our stardom cinema? Unless there's anything else you want to talk about, injury news around the league, anything else that's striking you as interesting.
Let's do it.
So we'll start. We're going to each do 2 starts, 2 sits. Going to go around the positions. We're not going to talk about kickers and defense because yawn. So I'm going to start. We'll start with quarterbacks, and I'm going to start with the stardoms. And I can't believe I'm going to say this because this guy's been going all preseason and mock drafts, whatever, as the QB7 off the board. I wasn't very big on him. I got to start Josh Allen.
I was kidding. And it's against the Dolphins, right?
How do you not? I mean, so first of all, you know the guy's going to run at least 8 to 10 times and give you possibly anywhere near the century mark on yards on the ground with possibly a rushing touchdown or maybe 2. But last week, against, granted, the Jets, they're abysmal. The dude went back and had 48 passing attempts in a game that they pretty much controlled, over 300 yards, 312, 2 passing touchdowns, and he still added 57 rushing yards on the ground as well. He's going against the Dolphins, who Cam Newton, from an air perspective, put up a pedestrian couple hundred yards, but Cam Newton had 75 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns against this Dolphins team. That Bills defense is phenomenal. He's got a nice chemistry, Allen, with both John Brown and Stephon Diggs, first-year receiver there. I like Josh Allen this week as a starter. Who's your first guy, Cyclops?
So as much as I hate to say it, is Tom Brady.
Oh,
I know. And, we've seen this before, right? We've seen this story. He has a pedestrian week, not great. And then he comes out and everyone's like, Tom Brady's done. And we're going back 10 years, right? Probably in his mid-30s. And Tom Brady's done, and blah, blah. And then the next week he comes out and throws for like 400 yards and, 4 touchdowns and 1 rushing yard. But I don't know. They play Carolina this week. It sets up for him to have a great bounce back week. Yeah, Godwin might not be there, but they have other. They have 3 potentially really great tight ends. OJ Howard. We'll talk about tight ends later, but I just think it sets up for him to come back and have a really nice week.
It's funny you say that. I'm just going to go because of the opponent. Carolina's got one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL. Yeah. And last week, Tom Brady, he's getting beaten up on the pick 6. He didn't look fantastic. You know what? The kid still came in as QB10. He had a bad week. And as much as I hate this guy, if he was playing any other team other than Carolina, I'd say you're out of your freaking mind. But because of this game script, I'm going to agree with you. Tom Brady is a nice. So my second start of the week, and this is someone that's probably in your starting lineups, but I've got him and another quarterback on him is Matt Ryan. He should be a must start always anyway. But some people in 2 quarterback leagues, he's always, to me, just so dramatically underrated. But this, to me, Matt Ryan has a chance to be, QB 3 or 4 this week. Last week against Seattle, 450 yards passing on 54 pass attempts with 2 touchdowns. And you know what I love about it? 5 balls of 20-plus yards. He loves to air it out. One of the first times we've seen in a long time where 3 receivers had 9 grabs for over 100 yards, and it's still unbelievable to me. Julio Jones goes for 150 yards and still can't get a touchdown.
He doesn't get it. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
He's going to have 2 touchdowns this year.
Last year he did get 6, I think, 6 or 8.
I know. It's just
a little bit better, but Calvin
you
really
just think he should have 18 touchdowns a year.
Yes.
And his ceiling is like 8.
Well, just because he's a physical specimen. This is a guy you think you're going to throw some fades into the end zone, right? That's going to grab the balls. They're going Calvin Ridley and even Russell Gage. But I love Matt Ryan this week. He's got a very exploitable matchup.
Going against the Cowboys,
Going against the Cowboys. They're banged up. Their secondary is not phenomenal. And they've got a good offense. So I think Matt Ryan's a fantastic start this week.
Okay. So my second quarterback is actually the opposition to Brady, and it's Teddy Bridgewater. I think this is going to be a bit of a shootout game. The Carolina defense didn't look great, but they also put up, I think, 30 points last week. I forget the exact final, but they put up points last week. I think Bridgewater is going to end up, and he also runs it a little bit. He's going to end up right around that QB like 10 also this week.
I'm going to disagree with you. I love Bridgewater. Okay. I think he's a phenomenal NFL – not phenomenal. I'm going to go Trump. Tremendous, by the way. That's a joke if you know me. He's a good NFL – huge, tremendous, exploding trees. He's a good NFL quarterback, but he doesn't like taking those shots downfield. His week got salvaged last week because of broken coverage, and Robbie Anderson got loose. I like him. I think he's a good quarterback. I agree with you there. He's a little too conservative, a little bit like a Tyrod Taylor. But let's hope he breaks out. I'd love to see that happen. Yep. All right, so let's go to our sits this week. My first sit is a guy I really, really like, but I don't like the matchup and how I think they're gonna scheme this game. I would sit Drew Lock. They're going against a very, very good Pittsburgh D on the road. They really got their run game going last week. They're loving how things are looking with Melvin Gordon. Pittsburgh held the Giants to 16 points, under 300 yards on the ground. They led the league in takeaways last year. The Steelers did. And I think Drew Lock, I really do like him as a quarterback. I think he's going to be an emerging star. They might not have Cortland Sutton, but I would sit Drew Lock this week on the road in that matchup. So
that was actually my first sit as well. And I agree with that. That's going to be a tough. The Steelers look great. You got to be careful with this one 100%. My sit, and the problem is, like, Drew Lock generally isn't going to be your number one starter. right? Just like Sam Darnold isn't going to be your number one starter. But I would sit I would sit Fitzpatrick this week. And again, Fitzpatrick isn't going to be in your top 10 or 12. So,
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird. It's like there's not a ton of quarterbacks in like your top 12 to 14 that I would sit this week. You're going into backups.
Right.
So,
and again, we're start him, sit him. We're not going to talk about Lamar Jackson, Pat Holmes, oh my God, I'm blanking here. Aaron Rodgers, who came back, Matt Ryan, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott. Yeah. You're starting them. So we're talking about the guys that you're on the cusp about. And that's obviously what a stardom sit-em's about.
So I'll go into my second one because Drew Lock was there, but Stafford. Sit Stafford this week going against Green Bay. It's at Green Bay. I just think without Galladay, he looks a little bit more pedestrian and may have a tough week there.
It's interesting. I think Green Bay is going to put up the yards because Detroit's not going to be able to stop him. So I think Stafford's going to drop back 50-plus times today. And just because of volume, he might get some garbage time yards, some fantasy garbage time, which we love, by the way.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. We love garbage time. My second sit is Derek Carr, who is looking halfway decent. Biggest reasons why they're going up against an exceptional New Orleans defense. And New Orleans defense this week is going to be their offense is going to be fairly conservative. They're going to be running the ball like crazy. And that's what Gruden's going to be doing with Vegas. Josh Jacobs had 25 touches last week. Did absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, great game.
And then Derek Carr last week won 22 of 30 for 239 yards and 1 touchdown. And again, Jacobs had 25 attempts. So I like Carr. I think he's doing a good job managing the game for NFL. For fantasy, you're sitting him this week.
Right. But again, if Carr's your starting quarterback on your roster, you have other
problems. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move
Let's go to our running backs.
All right, yep. So we already talked about him earlier, Melvin Gordon. Now, you were probably already starting him last week if you had drafted him, potentially because you may have been able to get him a little bit later because he was a split-time running back. But with Lindsey out, Gordon is a must-start. He should get 20 to 25 touches this week, and that equates very well for him.
Yep, he's got nobody really to worry about spelling him. He's not coming off the field for third down and or passing yard downs. Yeah, I happen to love Melvin Gordon as well. My start's going to be Raheem Mostert. People were up in the air on him. Never about the talent. The guy he's a fantastic one-cut north-south runner. Fits perfectly into that system. Everyone was concerned about Tevin Coleman, who's a darling there, and of course getting Jerick McKinnon back, who probably will play one more game before his season-ending injury is inevitable. But Mostert's just a baller. He's going up against a pitiful New York Jets team without their star wide receiver, so they're going to be 3 and out consistently. I think Mostert is absolutely. He was a great flex start. Everyone knew that. I think Mostert's going to put up not RB2 numbers, but very, very close to RB1 numbers this week against a very beatable Jets run defense.
I mean, Mostert didn't have an incredible week. I mean, he did points wise, right? But a lot of that was on his 70 or 75 yard catch for a touchdown, right? Which obviously boosts anybody's numbers. And of course, if you could do that consistently, well, great. I'll take that guy.
Yeah,
right.
He still outsnapped all the other running backs. He's clearly their RB1 there, and is going to. And I think this is a game that the Niners are just going to be able to control. And Mostert's just going to be grinding down that clock. They're going to see this is what it'd be as higher volume games.
Right. I like. Why am I showing that? What the heck? I'm going to show that. I like Malcolm Brown this week as another start. Sorry, I got sidetracked there. I like
Try to stay on focus on the show. Watch porn later.
Yeah. Jeez. All right. Malcolm Brown. Just looked good last week. He had 2 touchdowns last week. Two touchdowns, 18 for 79, 2 touchdowns, 3 catches, 31 yards. I mean, he should.
And just outsnapped everyone dramatically.
Everyone, yeah. Akers, I just don't see that changing much this week. They're going against the Eagles, who really did not look that good last week. They looked good in the first quarter.
They do have a very good run defense, though. They have a very good run defense.
They do. He also
a very beatable secondary, but a good run defense.
You get 20 touches, you're gonna get points. He had 21 touches last week. Nothing wrong with that for a guy that wasn't drafted anywhere.
No, he clearly looked like the best running back in that backfield last week. I'll give you that. My other start this week is, believe it or not a guy I was not very high on in draft, but based on his ADP, everyone grabbed him somewhere, is David Montgomery. A lot of this has to do with the matchup. They're going against the Giants. And last week, Montgomery outrushed Tariq Cohen. He had 13 attempts to Tariq 7, but he had 64 yards, averaged almost 5 yards a carry. Cohen had only 7 carries, and this is very interesting. He only had 2 targets, so they weren't pulling Montgomery as much out of those third down situations. They did, of course, some, but it's not like Cohen came in all those situations and had 6, 7, 8 grabs. Last week against the Giants, Pittsburgh did a really nice job running the ball. I say Pittsburgh because it wasn't James Conner, it was Snell. Snell came in and did a fantastic job getting chunk yards against that offense. I see Montgomery coming in and doing the same. Snell was averaging 6 yards a carry, put up 113 yards on the ground against them. Again, we know the obvious choices. You're starting Barkley, CMC, Zeke, and all those guys. Right. These are the fringe guys. Should you start sit? I do like Dave Montgomery this week.
Right. Why don't we, just because I'm going to run out of time because I have to wrap up by 10. I have to be somewhere. Why don't we stick to the stardoms for now? And if we have some extra time, because we've got about 8 minutes, we'll get to the sit-ems.
I got to say one sit though for running back. You got to sit James Conner. I don't like the matchup. I think that's an obvious. He practiced, but if you're starting James Conner this week, 100% agree. Sit him. He just way, way, way too injury prone, and Snell looked better. So absolutely,
you 100% know that's going to be at least a split back, if not Snell getting more.
Absolutely. And one other shit, just really quick, if you have someone better than Chris Carson, do it. He had 6 carries last week. That became a pass run, a pass first offense that I don't like the matchup. Carlos Hyde actually had more rushing attempts than Chris Carson last week. So
but Chris Carson had.
He had 2 touchdowns on receptions. I understand that. I'm just saying, in this, if you have someone better than Chris Carson, start him. I don't like him this week.
Yeah, and this is where you can't just look at points, right? Benny Snell had over 100 yards rushing, and Chris Carson had 25.
Yeah,
I don't know the exact number.
It was paltry.
6 attempts, right? But he got the 2 touchdowns receiving. If Benny Snell scores a touchdown, he's right there with the same amount of points as a top 10 running back from last week.
Yep.
But
absolutely.
So you can't always look at just, when you're going down to do waivers, you can't just look at points. You got to look at
the attempts, game script, what have you.
Right.
All right, so let's move on. Let's talk about our wide receiver starts of the week, and we talked about him a little bit, but I love Corey Davis this week. You had A.J. Brown out. Even last week with A.J. Brown healthy, I mean, if you're an A.J. Brown owner, again, don't panic. It's week 1. If you remember last year, he didn't really start coming on until midway through when Tannehill came in around, I think, week 8, 9, or 10. I wouldn't panic, but Corey Davis last week with a healthy A.J. Brown had 8 targets and snagged 7 of them for 101 yards. Yep. And, of course, A.J. Brown being out really helps that.
Yeah, no, that was my number 1 start as well. They have, and not only that, they have Jacksonville this week. Now, granted, Jacksonville didn't play bad last week, but Corey Davis is probably your number 1 stardom this week as far as deeper. Like Corey Davis again, probably wasn't the year before. Everyone was really high on Corey Davis, and then he kind of fell behind AJ Brown. Right? How many leagues that you're in did you see Corey Davis even drafted?
Yeah, exactly.
But he was probably drafted in 25% of leagues.
Yeah, 12-man leagues, a little more.
Yeah,
more likely,
yeah, maybe. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So my start this week, again, a guy that was kind of looked, and we talked about this earlier, is Darius Slayton. They definitely. What were you saying?
I thought say anything.
Oh, I thought you were saying something. He definitely has the best connection with Jones that I see, and you get this guy in your lineup.
Yeah, no, I like Slayton. He's definitely a talent. My other start this week.
He was an overall number 5 wide receiver after week 1.
Yeah, he had two touchdowns, right?
Yeah, 6 catches, over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, 9 targets. So, when you're getting that to 9 to 10 target range, you're very happy with your wide receiver.
Very nice volume, absolutely.
Yeah, except AJ Green.
Exactly. My other start this week is going to be Marvin Jones with Kenny Galladay out. They're pretty much a 1A, 1B there anyway. I like Marvin. He had last week, I think he had 8 or 10 targets, didn't grab as many of them. I think they were trying to force feed him the ball. But I like the matchup. They're going against Green Bay. Adam Thielen last week dropped $110 and 2 touchdowns on them. And I think Marvin Jones is going to fit that role very nicely there. Yep. It's him and Danny Amendola, who's that underneath guy. He'll get you 5, 6, 8 grabs. And Quintez Cephas, who interestingly had 8 targets last week as well. But I like Marvin Jones this week against what should be a pretty high scoring game.
Yeah, I'm not as high on Jones, but I can't say don't start him. I'm just saying I have other people I would rather stream than Marvin Jones this week. Another wide receiver like Sammy Watkins, again, fell off everybody's radar because he kind of fell off the face of the earth after week 1 last year, right? And he was hurt and he really wasn't doing much. Came back a bit in the playoffs, but he goes for 7 for 82, touchdown. I mean, 9 targets. You get 9 targets from Mahomes, you're going to be a pretty happy receiver and pretty happy fantasy owner.
It's interesting, but with Sammy Watkins, it's what have you done for me lately? And what I mean by that is, yes, you had the targets week 1. That offense is so unusual. It's who's up next because he had that phenomenal week 1. Everyone out and spent $40 fab money on him.
Well, last year it was also over 200 yards.
It was ridiculous, but then he literally took the next 15 games off. There's just so many mouths to feed there. I honestly think, I think Kansas City might be better this year because they have a legit RB1. But because of that, I think you're going to see regression in every aspect of that passing game. Just because when Andy Reid has that true feature running back, he loves to be able to lean on them. 25 carries for CEH last week. They're all still very talented, but I think the regression is going to come there because they know keep their defense off the field is to keep their offense on the field. You don't want to score in 3 minutes.
So last year, Sammy Watkins, week 1, had 11 targets. He had 9 catches for 198 and 3 touchdowns. Okay. You know how many touchdowns he ended the year with?
3.
3.
Exactly. And that's my point. His week 1 was his season. Right.
He never broke 100 yards the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's funny. So he's one of my sits this week, Sammy Watkins as receivers for exactly that statistic that you just mentioned. Yeah. And just quickly for tight ends, because it is an important position, you're going to start Noah Fant. Again, without Cortland Sutton, I don't think it's going to be a big passing game. But Drew Lock's going to put up at least what's that?
Cortland Sutton, I have not seen is out. I still see him as questionable.
He's still questionable. It was a game-time decision. But I'm saying even with Cortland Sutton in or out, there's no question Fant has an incredible chemistry with Drew Lock. And a tough defense like that, they're going to do some checkdowns to him. I love Fant for Lock this week. I'd say Fant's probably going to get somewhere around 85 yards and a touch. On my other tight end start's going to be Jared Cook. Drew Brees might not light it up. He probably won't, but he'll probably put up at least a couple hundred yards. Great chemistry with Cook, and without Michael Thomas, those yardage have to go somewhere, and I really like them going to Jared Cook this week.
How about, okay, so my two, amazingly enough, we're going to have 2 tight ends from the same team. How about Taysom Hill? Right? He gets moved on a lot of he gets moved to a tight end position. He's not a quarterback listed anymore in most formats, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Taysom Hill is tight end. He could throw a touchdown. He could run them. The guy
He comes in the red zone a lot. I didn't know he was listed as tight ends in a lot of leagues. I didn't know that.
And with Michael Thomas out, Taysom Hill could be your tight end. Crazy
Absolutely.
enough, right?
Yeah. One interesting. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Cyclops.
No, and I'm going to do my other tight end, which is O.J. Howard. In Tampa, had a really nice week last week. Has a good connection with Breeze, and Gronkowski was
Brady.
Brady. My bad. We were just talking about the Saints.
Breeze, yeah.
But Tampa, they have 3 really nice tight ends for Breeze. You might see 3. With Godwin out, you may see 3 tight end sets. Right?
I've never seen Arians do that, but that'd be interesting.
You put Brate, Gronkowski, and Howard on the field at the same time with Evans. Where are you going? And Brady loves the tight ends. So I think O.J. Howard could have a nice week this week.
Very interesting. And one tight end you want to pay a little bit of attention to is if you need a streaming option is Jordan Reed. If you remember his days in Washington when he didn't have a concussion, he was one of the better receiving tight ends in football with George Kittle out. Granted, Brandon Ayuk is coming back. There's just not a lot of passing options on that team, and Garoppolo loves the tight end. I just love saying that. So you might want to look at Jordan Reed as a possible pickup option there. So
Jordan Reed is like the James Conner of tight ends, right? Like you're lucky to get a quarter or a half out of him.
But when he's on, when he is playing and he's healthy, the guy can put up yards. He's a very good route runner, 100%. Very good receiving tight end.
If you can get a game out of him and stream him, he might. You're way ahead of the game. For sure.
This could be his game again with George Kittle out there. So, were there any more questions that came up?
I think there is one. We'll get to in 1 second. I think there's other tight ends I would rather stream than Jordan Reed, just for the fact of his history. And he hasn't played in who knows how long. He's probably played, I haven't looked at it, but he's probably played like 3 games over the last 3 years due to injury and whatnot. But like Jonas Smith and players like that, and O.J. Howard, who probably wasn't drafted in a lot of it.
If those guys are available. If Goddard, Jonas Smith are available, I would look at that as well.
So we just got another question here. Marvin Jones or Scary Terry?
Oh, Terry McLaurin?
I assume that's who they're talking about. Yeah, I don't know.
T-E-R-R-Y? Yeah. I'm going to go Marvin Jones just because I still don't believe in Dwayne Haskins yet. As soon as they put Alex Smith behind center, we'll start talking about Terry McLaurin. But with it, you've got a high under over for Detroit and Green Bay. That's going to be a high-scoring game, and he's the wide receiver 1 there. And like I said, Thielen just torched Green Bay for some yards. So in that situation, I'm going to go Marvin Jones.
Yeah, I'm going to, even though I'm not a huge Marvin Jones, believer this week, I'm going to have to agree with that. I think in Washington, they're going to focus more on the running game, dump offs from the backfield. Terry McLaurin, it's going to be like 6 targets, 4 catches, 55 yards.
Exactly. Maybe.
Game.
6 catches would be nice.
And every, look, he's a deep threat. So maybe you end up getting that, 30, 40, 50-yard touchdown. If you do, hey, great. But as far as these two, go with Marvin Jones this week.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for all the questions. Another great show. Cyclops, you can go, feel free to go watch your porn right now. And we got a lot of good stuff coming up next week. We'll dissect some of the interesting game narratives that came out of tomorrow's games. Look for our show on Tuesday at 9 p.m. We'll dissect what's going to come up on Thursday night, some start sits as well. And we'll talk about also what happened on Monday Night Football. So stay safe, stay healthy, get your buzz on with the Fantasy Buzz, and happy football tomorrow.
All right. I think you're going to see a lot more you're going to see a lot of things play out a little bit after week 2, and you'll have a lot better idea of what players, week 1s were maybe they're going to fade or they're going to stay, whatever. We'll see. It's exciting. Yep. We get a second week. Who thought we would have 1 week of football, let alone 2? So
exactly. Optimism 100%. We have freaking football. Exactly. And I'll tell you, our mantra on this show, don't panic on your team. It's week 2. You draft players for a reason. Don't panic. Stay with your game.
All right, everybody have a good one.